All right, hey everybody, it's Charlie Craven, and I just had to do a bunch of prep work because I want to show you this fly. This is a Sculpzilla, and I've kind of got all my pieces and parts ready, and but this is a cool fly. This is one of the first flies I ever saw. Get you back on the screen here. First flies I ever saw that was articulated, and uniquely with this fly, it's a single hook articulated fly. You can see it's got a 20-pound backing connector with an octopus hook back here, so it's just got a super swimmy motion. I got some of these from Ray Chang from Solitude years ago at the Fly Tackle Dealer Show when it was in Denver, right before I was going to Idaho one fall, and took these out there and laid waste to them. This is just a super swimmy, cool fly, and it's a little hard to figure out. It's really, I'll tell you truthfully, it's not a hard fly to tie, but it is a little hard to figure out. So I'll try to do what I can to help. So I'm going to start with a Gamakatsu octopus hook, and this is a size 4. You can use a size 4 or a 6, and the octopus hook is the up-eye short shank hook like you see there, and they come in different colors. This is a black one, but obviously, use whatever color you like. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of 20-pound backing, and this is just white backing, and I'm going to make a little loop and put the two ends together and push them through the hook eye, and then I'll push that loop down around the hook like so, and slide that up out of the way. And that's a couple inches long. I've got to keep the camera centered here for the ultimate length of this fly, but you can see it's a couple inches long. You want to give yourself some slack. So once I've got that on there, I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to make a short thread base from just behind that loop, just about back to the hook point, and then I'll run forward again. And then I want my thread right about in the center of that. And I'm going to take a olive variant. We're going to tie an olive version, but an olive variant rabbit strip. And I'm going to tie this in by separating the fur. And I want this hide to come back just to the bend of this hook. And to separate the fur, I'll just wet my fingers a bit and create a part. And you want to try to get it as straight as you can. There we go. I'll try to be more adamant about doing stuff up where you guys can see it. And I'm going to lay that part right over the center of the hook and take my thread up and over. And I'm just going to make a narrow little band there. This is just a single tie down point right here to anchor that hide on top, like so. And you can kind of wet it, that makes it a little more controllable. And I'll fold that front end back and bring my thread in front. And then I'll whip finish there. And I usually just do a hand whip finish because I've got to work around the backing. Now, of course, you could do the backing now. It's a little trickier to do, but you could absolutely do it now. And now it's not a bad idea to take this now and put a little shot of head cement on those wraps. Typically, I'll do that when the fly's done, but I don't want to forget. All right, so now we're going to set that aside for a second. We're going to come into the vise with what I've got here is a Tiemco 811S. Although this is not the hook I would suggest. This is a really good hook, and we're going to cut the hook point off. So use the cheapest large saltwater hook that you can. Whatever you've got laying around. If you got some old mustads or daiichis or dairikis, I think I have a big bag of dairikis around here somewhere. But you want a cheap hook because you're going to cut the bend off. But we want an eye that's big enough to hold this. Let's see, this is a 3/8 inch black cross-eyed cone on this one. You want a big enough eye that cone won't slide over it. And what I'll do here is I'm going to start my thread here in front of this cone to start. And I'll just run part way down the bend for right now. And then I'm going to take my two tag ends of that backing and push it up through the cone as well. Now the measurement we want to get, and you can kind of let me move my thread here just to illustrate. You can kind of get an idea of the overall length of the fly You want your rabbit strip to reach up into the back of the cone, and it's a pretty short articulation between the two, something about right there. And I can kind of lock that down in that point, and then I can slide my cone back out of the way, and I'll anchor that backing down on top of the hook, just about back to the hook point, and then I'll run forward over it again. And again, you're just anchoring this down. You want it to be tight, and I'll take those two ends and push those down through the hook eye, and draw them back along the bottom and anchor them in place. And I'm not really worried about the bulk here. As a matter of fact, I kind of want some bulk. I want to fill in some of the back of that cone. And then again, I'll whip finish my thread. You know you're onto something good when you got a fly that you've got to whip finish a few different times. Now I can slide my cone up to the eye. So now you've got this hook dangling back here that's going to be in your way. And what I like to do is take a rubber band, and I'm going to drape it around the back end of my vise and bring it up and catch the hook point in it. That's an old rubber band, and I'm sure it's going to break. But anyway, that'll hold that back out of the way for the moment, and I can kind of hold that rabbit strip back out of the way as well. And then I'll start my thread behind. Now, one thing that I want to show you, and typically I'll glue the eyes into the cone ahead of time, but I want to show you how I do this. So what I've got here are 3/16 inch red holographic dome eyes, and I'm going to take my cone. I'm going to put just a tiny little drop of Zap Gel in that eye socket. And the nice thing with the cone right now is it's got that socket up, so the glue's not going to run out of it. I'm going to take my eye, and very carefully, without getting it on my fingers, I'm going to put that eye in that socket. And then I'm going to use these are my hackle pliers, my rotary hackle pliers, but they have a half hitch tool on the end to push that eye down. And I want that glue to sort of ooze out around the edge a little bit. That'll help anchor it in place. And then I'll flip that cone over, and I'll do the same thing here on the other side. Now just a little bit of glue, that's the key here. If you use too much, it kind of goos up everything. You end up with it all over your fingers, and you're stuck to everything, and you got to swear, and there's already enough of that. So I'll glue that other eye in place. So we've got our eyes in place. And like I say, I'll typically do those ahead of time. You can actually just do that on your desktop and let them dry. But that's how that's done. That was just an easy place to show you. So now I'm going to run my thread back just to the hook point here. Yeah, I'm literally right at the hook point. And this is where we're going to dub the body. And the body is just pearl ice dubbing. And I want to take a pretty good wad of it. And I'm going to twist the base of this on and just get this dubbing started. And then I'm going to direct dub. So I'm just going to start wrapping this dubbing. And this is going to build this big fat body that we need pretty quickly. And I'm going to dub it right up to the back of the cone. I'm actually going to put another little pinch in there. Part of the catch on this fly is you'll probably end up leaving yourself too much room, because we're going to ultimately push this cone back against the front of the fly, and you're going to end up with too much room at the front. So you really do, contrary to your normal tie-in, you do really want to kind of crowd things a little bit. Okay, we're not worried about where this cone's sitting just yet. We're going to have time to fix him in place. Now I'm going to take my rabbit strip, and this one is cut just about the right length. See how that rabbit strip comes just about to the middle of the cone? This one is 2 1/4 inches long. I measured it before and that's all the way to the end of the fur from the end of the hide. I'm going to take this strip and shove it up in the back of that cone and catch it on top with a few turns. And that'll take up some of that space as well. And I want that right over the top of the fly, like so. Okay. I better stop messing with that rubber band. He's not going to last through the fly. We'll see how far we can get. All right, now we're going to put in a little collar. And the collar on this fly is going to be a guinea feather. And we're going to use a red one. And it only takes about a turn. I don't like, while I am a fan of red, I'm not a fan of a lot of red on a fly. So I'm going to take this guinea feather, and I've created a separation point, just like you would with a soft tackle. And I'm going to cut the tip of the feather off, but I'm going to leave myself that little triangle. And I can come in and trim that into short bristles on either side if I need to. I really didn't need to, but you can do that. And I'll tuck that inside the cone as well. And I've got the inside of the feather toward the hook, just like you would any other soft tackle. I'm going to anchor that down nice and tight. Grab my hackle pliers here, and I'll grab the base of this feather, and I want to fold it. So I want to stroke these fibers back, and you see you can kind of work them up and down a little bit. That piece that's closest to the hook is always the hardest, but we can kind of get him folded on this first turn. And I'm just going to make, like I said, just about one turn, and then I'll tie that off. This is just a little kind of red gill highlight in there. And I'll trim that stem out. Just barely any stem left. There it is. Trim that stem out. And I just kind of crease all that back. You can kind of even use the cone to push that back and crease that in place. You can see it's pretty sparse little red collar there. And then we're going to add a couple of pectoral fins. And what I'm going to use for this are 2 mallard flank feathers. And if you dig through the bag of mallard flank, you invariably have a couple or several little tiny feathers like this. These are the small ones in the bag. And I want 2 that, these 2 were stuck together, so they were probably right on top of each other on the bird. And we're going to strip them down at the same time, so I've got their tips evened. And I'm going to strip them down fairly short here. You can see I'm just kind of getting my dry fit, thinking of my pectoral fin there. And then I'll strip the fibers off the base and trim them, leaving just the stub. So now I've got that. So I'm going to take one of these feathers on my near side here and lay him in along my near side and catch him with a couple turns of thread. And I can sort of tweak the stem to line this up, and this will show better for you on your side. So once I've got that in, I'm going to trim that stem out. And now I'll try to do this one on your side where you can see I want to match the length up. So I'm not tying it in right at the base. I'm going to catch in behind that stem, catch that feather. And I can kind of tweak this stem to position that. So it's just short little pectoral fins. And then I'll fold that stem back and catch it again. And if you're catching some of your guinea, like I see that I'm catching some of it here, obviously it's a collar. It's all the way around the hook, so it's not a big deal if you got a few little pieces caught. Then I'm going to lift that stem up again with my scissor tips, and I'll trim that out short. The reason I folded that back in is if you try to tie those feathers in just by that stem, they absolutely 100% will come out. So we're just saving ourselves that trouble of them coming out later. We're going to anchor them in with a fold, and that makes it much more secure tie down. All right, so once we've got those in there, we're going to put the collar on. And the collar is going to be, depending on well, it's going to be a Grizzly hen saddle, but depending on how thick your feathers are, 1 or 2 of these. And I'm going to use 2. I've tied a bunch of these, so I've used up all my big feathers off my saddle. So I've just got 2 of these stacked one on top of the other, like so. And I'm going to tie these in by their tip end as well, much like we just did that guinea. So I'll create a separation point, and I'll trim that into a little triangle, and then I'll trim the barbs off the sides so we've got a stem that we can stick in that cone, like so. And again, I'm going to tie this in on my near side of the hook, just because I can see that side, and shove those butt ends inside the cone. Anchor that down good and tight. And you can see our cone is still moving. Not a big deal. Now, before we get too far along, we do want to put a little bit of that gel in there. So a little bit of super glue gel, Zap Gel. And you can see I just kind of squeeze a drop in there and then I rotate the cone. And I'm going to take and fold these two feathers. And you can see I've left some of the fluff on the bottom. That really fills out the collar nicely. And I'm folding this, but really just to make a clear edge on the front edge here as I wrap. I'm not really trying to sweep it back much. I'm just trying to make it wrap cleanly. So I've got one turn of hackle, and then I'll get the next turn of the fluff. And you can actually feel it sink down off that front edge of the body area into the back of that cone. And we'll tie those feathers off, and you can actually reach inside the cone and trim those stems. Just a few turns to lock things down there. And then we're going to whip finish behind the cone. Trim that thread out. And then push the cone back up against that collar. And it'll glue itself to the front edge of the fly. Now, to hold that in, you also want to make sure that your eyes are on the sides. We're going to start the thread again here in the front of the cone, and we're going to build a little thread wedge. And again, this is just to anchor everything in place. So we're going to build, and obviously the shorter this space can be, the better off you are. You don't want too long a nose on this thing. And you could, do this with different colors. If you were going to Alaska, do it with an orange color, kind of an egg-sucking sculpin kind of thing. We're going to whip finish that. And we've got that cone wedged in there, and I can actually feel you can see how the collar moves when I move it. It's glued to the collar. So now our tie-in process is done. I'm going to take and put a little shot of head cement on these thread wraps. Now I know somebody will say, I always, when I tie the articulation down, I always super glue it. And a lot of times I do too. And a lot of times I don't. And I've never once ever had one pull out. I will have them occasionally wear through when I'm just catching tons of fish, which is every single day that I fish. But I very rarely have them pull out. So, if it makes you feel better to glue that in, glue that in. So now what we're going to do, and this is the final piece, let's just break that rubber band. Oh, see, now it won't break. I was all nervous about it the whole time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut this hook off, this front hook. We don't want that front hook on there. So I'm going to take a pair of cutters here, and I'm wearing eye protection in the form of magnifying glasses. And I'm going to cut that hook off flush. You can see I just cut that just right. Get that up there where you can see him. Right flush at the end of the body. And then kind of sweep everything back. But that is a super swimmy little streamer pattern, and obviously tied in all kinds of different colors like you would any other streamer, but really, really slinky in the water. That big cone head, not super heavy, but heavy enough, with that rabbit strip tail with the hook kind of dangling at the back there. This was a fly that sort of changed everything when it came out. This was a pretty unique fly. Still is a pretty unique fly. There's not a whole lot else like it. But that's the Sculpzilla. You can actually see a step-by-step of that in my Tying Streamers book, which if you don't have, you should go buy just to be nice. I could probably use a new pair of flip-flops. So I appreciate it if you do that, and if you want, I'll sign it for you too. If you don't want, I won't sign it for you. But let me put this hook in the vise, and I'll just hold his nose up. Oh no, he's too long. I got to hold him back here. So that's our Sculpzilla. Twist them up, put them in your box. You will be happy with that one. Really nice little fly, and it's super slinky, but it's not too big either. It's kind of medium size. 2.5. It's definitely not 3 inches long on the big ones. That's an easy fly to cast and a fly that catches fish, no doubt about it. So, hope you enjoyed that one. I'm Charlie Craven. I'll be back with more. Thanks for watching.